Essentially, can you tell us anything more with regards to details around the current fire campaign that the Safety Committee is busy conducting?
Good morning. The city has for several years been driving a very aggressive awareness campaign around the entirety of the city, but focusing particularly on hotspot areas, which include backyarders and informal settlements. When we started this awareness campaign and the enhancing of our fire services in 2006, we had around 7.9 deaths per 100,000 as a result of fire, which is an alarming figure. That figure has been brought down to under 3.5. So we've more than halved the number of people who die as a result of a fire. And there's obviously much more work to be done, but to some extent that depends on residents themselves. The fire department can put a fire out rapidly, but it's up to residents to prevent the fire from starting, and that's what the awareness campaign, such as the one we did yesterday in Burundi Informal Settlement, was all about, where we went door to door handing out calendars and other materials and talking to residents about what they could do to prevent fires from starting and from affecting them.
Now, essentially, when did the campaign start and which areas are being focused on?
So this is something we've done at least for the last 5-6 years. It's a part of what has driven down the death rate, and predominantly in informal settlements. So we will do awareness campaigns with sometimes plays or theatre and awareness sessions at schools. We try and make it fun for the kids so they get to handle the fire hose as well, so that the experience is memorable. But then we also talk to them about what to do in a fire and how to prevent a fire from starting. And we do about 800 to 900 of these sessions per year around the city. So it's our disaster risk management service, the fire department itself, the fire life safety section, as well as the 107 call center, all participate in strengthening and amplifying this message.
Now, with the previous campaigns that you've had, have there been any sort of change with regards to the numbers of fires that have actually taken place in terms of a decrease over the past couple of years?
So this is where the stats become confusing, because in terms of deaths, absolutely, we've more than halved the number of deaths over the last 6 years, and we've seen some good improvement there. What hasn't happened is that your number of fires have decreased, and that bears relationship to the amount of informal settlements that have become established. The fact that Cape Town is the most rapidly urbanizing city in South Africa, so people are voting with their feet to try and set up a life for themselves here. They're choosing to see Cape Town as a place where there's opportunity, and that means a very rapid growth in informal settlements and backyarders, and that creates high-risk environments. So what we say, and one of the reasons we take as much action against informal settlements being established unlawfully as other cities do, is that every new informal settlement means high fire risk, high flooding risk, higher than average crime experienced by the residents within those settlements, and the inability to render services there. So that plays a big role, and unfortunately you're not measuring your number of fires over a static population and a static number of structures. So those have increased a lot, so one must expect to see an increase in the number of fires. But what we have an encouraging scene is a reduction in the loss of life, which for us is probably the most important determinant.
With the current situation in Lwandle, are you planning on going there and teaching the community more about community safety, or are they already included in some of your safety campaigns?
The campaign does rotate around the city, so every settlement will see us sooner or later, and I have personally been present in Lwandle before. We did a safety awareness session at a creche that included handing out materials, fire blankets, buckets that people can fill up with sand to help combat fires. We did a role play on the day. I think I still have some footage that I took of it myself, but that obviously needs to be strengthened and repeated over and over until everybody gets to see it and hear it and understand it. So yes, it will be part of the ongoing education, and as was indicated, our disaster management service responds immediately to any fire incident to help the families rebuild what they have. We're the only city in South Africa that hands out starter kits to fire victims so they can rebuild, and we make sure that there's humanitarian relief support in terms of food and clothing for people affected by fires, because we understand how devastating that is for somebody who doesn't, for instance, have household insurance.
Definitely. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. That was Mayoral Committee Member for Safety and Security, Mr. JP Smith, there on the fire campaigns in and around informal settlements in the Western Cape.